Have you ever seen a single sentence change the course of a Formula One season at 314 kilometers per hour, flying through the dark greens of the Arden Forest? Lewis Hamilton's voice crackled through the radio. That's better. Much better. Simple words. But for Ferrari, they meant everything. After months of pressure, frustration, and doubts, it was the first real sign that something had finally clicked. What changed? Not a new engine, not a wild new wing, just a brake pad. Yes, a brake pad. But this tiny upgrade might be the turning point in Hamilton's rocky but hopeful journey at Ferrari. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why that little piece of material could change everything for Lewis, for Ferrari, and maybe for the entire championship battle. So stay with us till the very end, because the deeper you go, the clearer it all becomes. It was lap 19 of the 2025 Belgian Grand Prix. Hamilton entered the downhill zone at Spa, approaching Lille-Combe, one of the most fearsome braking zones on the entire calendar. He braked, and for the first time all year, it felt right. There was no hesitation, no fight between man and machine, just trust. And when he told the team, much better, they knew. The months of work behind the scenes had finally paid off. But what made it all click wasn't a dramatic redesign. It wasn't some top-secret Ferrari-only invention. It was a revised Brembo brake pad, already available to other teams, but never truly understood until now. Ferrari didn't invent it. They recognized its potential at exactly the right time, tailored it to Lewis's driving style, and gave it to him when he needed it most. For most fans, a brake pad seems like a small thing. But for a driver like Hamilton, it's everything. His skill doesn't come from being the fastest on a straight line. It comes from feel, from how he uses the brakes to guide the car into every corner, how he bleeds speed gently, shifts the weight of the car, and rotates it through precision. But all season long, something had felt wrong. The brakes weren't giving him the feedback he needed. The pedal felt vague. The rear felt unstable. It wasn't that he lost talent. The car just wasn't speaking his language until Spa. That's when Ferrari finally gave him the version of the car he had been asking for, and suddenly, the rhythm returned. Let's rewind. When Hamilton left Mercedes for Ferrari, it shook the sport. The move was bold, dramatic, the kind of decision only a champion chasing one last shot at glory would make. But the reality after the first race was tough. The Super Formula 25 wasn't a bad car. It just wasn't built for him. It was shaped around Charles Leclerc, a driver with a completely different style. Where Leclerc used aggressive braking and quick turn-ins, Hamilton relied on smooth, controlled pressure. The result, a disconnect. Race after race, Hamilton was uncomfortable. The braking zones became battles. The interviews stayed polite, but underneath the surface, frustration was growing. He didn't feel at home in the car, and Ferrari, to their credit, were trying. But nothing was working until the brake pad. Ferrari's engineering team dug deep into data, telemetry, pressure maps, entry speeds. All of it pointed to one thing. Hamilton wasn't getting what he needed from the braking system. The team had already changed the rear suspension to try and help, but the real difference came from the updated brake pad. This new Brembo compound didn't wear differently or last longer. What it gave was consistency, a smoother feel, a predictable response. It allowed Hamilton to brake smarter, not later, and that was key. In corners like Lourdes or the bus stop, where every millimeter matters, the confidence returned. Once Hamilton had the brake pad, the difference was immediate. He began to trail brake deeper into corners. He used weight shift to rotate the car, something he hadn't trusted enough to do all season. His lap times didn't just improve, they became consistent. He wasn't chasing the car anymore. He was controlling it. The brake pad gave him back the feel that makes him special. And in Formula One, that feeling is everything. Because when you know what the car is doing under your feet, you don't just drive, you dominate. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Leclerc had already tested the same brake pad earlier in Canada. He said it felt okay, but went back to his original setup. That's fine. It suited his style. But now, Ferrari had a decision to make. Would they keep building the car only around Leclerc? Or would they start giving Hamilton what he needed? Giving Hamilton the pad at Spa was more than a technical move. It was a signal, a vote of confidence. Ferrari wasn't asking Hamilton to adapt anymore. They were adapting to him. And with just 11 races left in the season, that could change everything. Hamilton didn't win Spa. He didn't even get on the podium. But what he gained was arguably more important. Belief, confidence in the car, in the team, and maybe even in the title chase. He's still fifth in the standings, but the gap to the top isn't impossible to close. Tracks like Hungary, Singapore, and Brazil are coming up, all circuits where Hamilton has a strong record, and with the brake pad unlocking more tire management and smarter braking, Ferrari now has more strategy options. They can undercut, overcut, split strategies between drivers, and push Red Bull into mistakes. Inside the Ferrari garage, something has shifted. Leclerc and Hamilton aren't fighting. But there's a quiet tension now. Two setups, two styles, two different development paths. For the engineers, it's a balancing act. But for the fans, and for the championship, it's drama of the highest order. Hamilton doesn't need Ferrari to pick him over Leclerc. He just needs them to listen, and at Spa, they finally did. That subtle shift in trust could be the spark that changes how Ferrari works, not just now, but for the future. Hungary is next, a track where braking precision is everything. If Hamilton's confidence holds, we could be looking at a serious resurgence, not just for one weekend, but for the rest of the year. And if he starts outscoring Leclerc regularly, Ferrari might have to start asking different questions. Do we keep building the car around Charles, or is Lewis showing us a better way? This isn't just a battle between the drivers. It's a test of philosophy, between force and finesse, between old loyalty and new opportunity. And here's the big picture, everything happening now at Ferrari with Hamilton. The brake pad, the setup tweaks, the style adjustment. It all feeds into 2026. That's when the rules change again. And Ferrari is watching very closely to see whose feedback will shape that next car. Hamilton's influence is growing. If he keeps performing, he could become the model for the future Ferrari, one that's easier to drive, more stable, and more adaptable to different talents. Not just fast, but smooth. Not just powerful, but smart. That's not just good for Lewis. That's good for Ferrari's long-term success. So yes, it was just a brake pad, a small, almost invisible upgrade, but it changed the feeling. And in Formula One, when a champion like Lewis Hamilton finally feels at one with the car, everything changes. The confidence returns, the fire reignites, and suddenly, a season that looked like a struggle becomes a fight, not just for podiums, but for pride, for influence, and maybe, just maybe, for the title. The question now isn't, can Hamilton adapt to Ferrari? The question is Ferrari ready to adapt to him? Because if they are, this story is just getting started. Have you ever felt like everything you built is slipping away right in front of your eyes? That's exactly how Charles Leclerc looked. As he stepped out of the SF25 at the end of the Hungarian Grand Prix, his jaw was tight, his stare blank, and across the paddock, Lewis Hamilton was smiling, not celebrating, not showboating, just smiling, because he knew the shift had started, and he could feel it in the pit of his stomach. This is the story of how Ferrari's quiet gamble on Hamilton set upon his field is beginning to rewrite the team's hierarchy slowly. Then suddenly, a story of trust, ego, and one of the most emotional shifts inside a top team in years. So don't go anywhere, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why Leclerc might be more worried now than ever before, and why Ferrari's future is starting to wear the number 44. Let's go back to the Hungarian Grand Prix, a track that demands precision. Braking, corner entry, balance. It's not about raw power here. It's about rhythm, and Hamilton, he was dancing with the car again from the very first practice session. Something felt different. His feedback to the engineers wasn't frustrated anymore. It was sharp, clear, and positive. The upgraded brake pads from Spa had done more than improve feel. They'd unlocked a deeper confidence. For the first time since joining Ferrari, Lewis wasn't fighting the SF5. He was flowing with it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the garage, Charles Leclerc was not happy. His lap times were okay, but not stunning.